Welcome him to the stage.
Thank you. Am I mic'd up here? Oh, yeah, I am. Terrific. Okay. Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's Thursday afternoon. I know it's getting towards the end of the week, so lots of pretty tired. So thank you for attending here. So, wow, these are bright lights here. So I'm Bharath Rajagopalan. I have the distinct honor and pleasure to serve as the chair of the AR Alliance, which I'll talk about today. And the panel discussion that follows will go into more detail, and hopefully you'll find that interesting and of value. But in my real day job, I'm part of ST Microelectronics and part of the strategic marketing team. So let's just get right into it. So there are two narratives that exist today in the marketplace. One says the air industry is fantastic, it's thriving, it's incredible. And the other is that, hey, there's no market today. Where is it? And the question is, which one is true? And the answer is they're both true. The industry is thriving because you go to the show here, we have 3 days of great presentations and lots of demonstrations, lots of meetings. And so clearly, if you have that perspective, wear that lens, you say, wow, it's an incredibly thriving industry. But on the flip side, if you ask what's been sold in the marketplace, very little. And so the market really doesn't really exist for AR, and I don't want to burst anybody's bubble, but I think we all know that. The market's not there. And they can both be true. And so the question really becomes for all of us that how do we kickstart the market? How do we actually start to sell products and sell it into mass adoption, or at least wider spread adoption? That's really the key, and that's what we've been thinking about for the last several years. A lot of us have been thinking about, we have as well. So, perfect. So, the question always is, are we there yet, for AR? And the answer is, we're not there yet, but is there? It's really about the journey anyway. I don't think it's the end point by any means. Clearly there's a lot of progress in VR for sure. You've seen Meta and the Quest and other companies with VR products are doing fairly well for that kind of niche application. And so that's been there. Excuse me, let me turn this off here. I keep getting spam. Sorry about that. But the other thing is that we've had several decades of just significant technology development in this space as well. We're talking about upwards of several billions of dollars of investment in everything from optics and photonics and displays and software systems and electronics and so on and so forth. So there's been quite a bit of activity here as well. And what I will say is the following. What we need is there today. The fundamental inventions are there. The technology is there to start the market. Not to be the be-all, end-all, but it's there today. And it's really an engineering problem more than an R&D problem. And I think we have to really start to focus in on what are the engineering challenges we have to get a product, rather than continue to say, how do we have more and more, how do you have cooler and greater technologies? Because we got to start somewhere. And we're there today. If you look at the timeline of AR over the past almost 60 years, it's took a long time to get here. And I'll tell you that, obviously, it's 10 years now, by the way, since Google Glass came out. 10 years. And here we are still. And, okay. And so, what's really interesting about this last year is really the so-called era of spatial computing. This is where I'm going to credit Apple, right? When Apple came out with the Vision Pro, they're starting to popularize spatial computing. This term, spatial computing, a lot of us know has been in the industry. It's a very nerdy term. But now regular people, civilians, people who are not in the industry, are starting to talk about it. And that's really interesting. We're in the Apple Vision Pro. There's a lot of stuff out there saying this product doesn't do this, it doesn't do that, it's not as good as this, not as good as that. If you haven't tried it, I request or I ask you to go try this product out. I'm not pushing this product sales by any means, but just to give a flavor of the kind of experiences that can be had and what we want to drive towards for the future, and having them come out with this product really legitimizes this category in the public side, at least. We all know about it. It was legitimate for us, certainly. All of us have been working on it for a long time. But certainly on the public side, it's really helped quite a bit. It's a catalyst, and it's also a catalyst industry as well. So the timing is really right now, I believe, a very good time for us to start thinking about solving the engineering challenges and stop continuing to develop on future technologies. So again, the industry exists today. It's a great industry. I've been in it for a long time. I continue to stay here. But the market, Not there yet. And it's really the time to really start to get out of this whole Gartner's trough of disillusionment and come out of that into a real product side. And what it's going to require is collaboration, and that's really, really important. What we don't really have today on an industry-wide basis is a collaborative endeavors and collaborative efforts to really help drive and propel the industry forward in a very coherent and a very predictable way. So hardware. Hardware is what we're focused on as a company. Hardware is what we're focused on as an alliance. And it's a complex space, And what I'll say is the following. It is not a technology. It's not a display device. It's not about gesture. It's not about tracking. It's all those things, right? It's not one thing. And the hardest part, for those of you who are not in this space, is that the integration is so complicated. I mean, cell phone's pretty complicated, but it's pretty forgiving in terms of size, and it's pretty forgiving in terms of allowing some design flexibility. We try to cram everything together in a headset. It's super complicated, as a lot of you know. And the question then becomes is how do we handle that? And the other thing I will say, and a lot of us know as well, is that we are undergoing a paradigm shift. It's going to take at least a decade probably, give or take. But we're talking about the 3 C's: compute, collaborate, and communicate. That's going to fundamentally change slowly, but in time, we're going to be in a very, very different domain, particularly when you start to talk about spatial computing. And so what we believe, and what I believe is required, is to have a unified ecosystem. It's really, really important for 2 reasons why. One is you want to get products into the mass market. You cannot do that. You cannot sell millions and billions of units of product if you don't have an ecosystem that's unified. Full stop. Okay. The second thing, it's in our industry especially, when you have such disparate technologies that need to integrate together, from optics and photonics and electronics and power and sensors and compute, and then take all those together in algorithms, it's super complicated. So if we don't have an ecosystem unified, and when you're highly constrained in terms of geometry and size and weight and all those things, you're not going to get products out there. So it's really, really important. And this word ecosystem is used too loosely, but we actually mean something very specific by it. I'll talk about it a little bit later. And so if we look at the technical challenges, just standing on the hardware side again, I'm not even talking about SDKs and the software and the applications. On the hardware side, obviously you have a display, optics, and photonics. That's what we all see. But then you got to integrate into that sensors and actuators of various flavors, both motion sensors and image sensors of various flavors. If you look at the Apple Vision Pro, they've got many, many, many cameras, for example. You need to have voice and sound as well. And then you got to put that together with compute and connectivity. That's really, really hard. And then how do you then ensure image quality? And by the way, when you have all that together, what does the UI look like? What does the UX look like? How do you manage all that with these devices? And by the way, obviously you want to be the smallest, the lightest, and lowest in power. So trying to do all that is it's hard, but it's doable, right? And again, I come back to how do we enable that? So it's a tale of 2 cities today, and so this is my view, and I think this is a pretty good, pretty accurate view. You have a bifurcation of the market. You've got one set of areas, I'll call it informatic display. I was going to call it smart glasses, but that means so many things to people. Just a simple display, a pair of glasses, and a glasses form factor that has information that you can use and consume. The other hand, you have immersive display, and they're very different, obviously, as we know, but they do share requirements. They share some fundamental requirements. They both have sensors of various flavors. They both have some kind of compute. They both need to have connectivity. Obviously, the requirements for immersive is much higher and much more stringent than certainly information display. But nevertheless, they do share classes of products, classes of technologies, which can then come together in a way to satisfy either criteria. And so that's what we need to really think about, is how do you sort of look at these different spaces within the envelope of technology. And if you look at it just as a pictorial view, we're trying to cram together all these devices in a small form factor. And by the way, to power it up, it's extremely complicated. In your cell phone, if a lot of you should know this, you typically have around a 4,000, 3,000 milliamp hour battery. Most of your phone is battery. You're not going to get a 4,000 milliamp hour battery on a headset or on a pair of glasses, I should say. So, and the energy density is not there today from a battery technology point of view. So you have to really think about how do we do all this to achieve a desired end goal. How do you get low latency? And by the way, what does low latency mean? Is it 16 milliseconds? Is it 8 milliseconds? Is it 4? low power, what does low power mean? Again, it means different things to different people. What does lightweight mean? Is it 50 grams, 80 grams, 40 grams? And so we start thinking about, okay, what do we mean when we say these things? And what do we specifically mean in terms of requirements? And that's really important to be able to distill together as an industry, because once you have those devices, then you have to have sort of high-level functions on top of that. With those devices, you have to have head tracking, gaze tracking, eye tracking. You have to be able to do gesture. You have to be able to map the environment in some way, shape, or form. You got to process sound. You got to have some AI there as well. So a lot going on here. So you got to really think about how does it all come together. And again, I want to echo the thing. You need to do it with an ecosystem. You need to do it using a platform. And having a platform-based approach to doing this is the only way to go forward here. Platforms exist in cell phones, platforms exist in television industry, so it's similar for us as well. And with a platform, you can start to integrate various disparate technologies. With a platform, you can get to market sooner. With a platform, you have interoperability, which is super important for any mass market product. Supply chain, with a platform ecosystem, you have a good supply chain, which can give you lower costs, right? So you have to do all these things. And you got to build the industry. And again, that's not where we are today, and that's what you hope to achieve and want to drive. So I introduced to you the AR Alliance, which we created last year. And the goal of this alliance that we put together is a nonprofit, by the way. And the goal was to create the ecosystem. The goal is to unify technologies in a way that can lead to repeatable, reproducible products by many and all companies. Then we want to do that, and we want to achieve that. Well, we will achieve that through developing standards, developing protocols, and harmonized, commonalized approaches, because you have to have that. Without that, you cannot ship product in mass market to the mass market. Hard to do. And as time goes along, we also want to make sure we advocate for industry through various other stakeholders in both industry, academia, and government as well. And so we created this group, the structure, in order to really facilitate the enabling of the market through sort of well-trod, well-defined, and well-executed approaches that's been done over the last decades in other industries as well. So as a mission statement, there's several key things that we want to achieve in our mission. One is a neutral environment, meaning that we welcome all companies of all sizes. We have companies that are very small to very large, as you'll see in the panel discussions shortly. But we also want the key thing, and this is where I'm an anti-salesperson. I tell people, do not join the alliance. We're not looking for you to join. We want people to join who are active. We want people to join who will actually help define requirements, help define standards, help move the industry forward in a very coherent way. We're not there just to hang around and drink coffee and have meetings. It's really important. And we're also focused, on hardware. And by hardware, I mean not just the physical devices, but also the firmware around that and the software around the hardware, the drivers, and so on and so forth to enable that. So that's really the core of our mission. And we welcome companies, all kidding aside, when I say I'm anti-sales, and I just want to make sure that the expectations are that we want people to really help drive this industry forward. And so when you think about what we do, we are focused on the hardware. Yes, we love optics and photonics and materials and systems and devices of all flavor and come together, but we also recognize and realize that as a platform view, you have to understand what does the software stack look like, what do the SDKs look like, what the application layer looks like, because that'll drive the choice of hardware, that'll drive the architecture, that'll drive the design of the platform. Similarly, for UI, what kind of UI are you going to have? And again, your choice of UI is going to very fundamentally drive your hardware selection as well as your hardware architecture, as well as your overall platform, the same thing for content. So even though we don't really, as an organization, want to delve into those areas, we partner with other organizations to make sure, from a holistic approach, that we execute this platform-based approach to include the entire totality of what it takes to develop and deliver a product, so-called holistic approach. And so the way we do it is through creating working groups in the organization. So far, I have 4 working groups, and we'll go into a little bit more detail, so I would encourage you to stick around for the panel discussion. I think you'll hopefully find it illuminating. We have one working group that's dedicated to image quality. By the way, it seems obvious, but image quality in a virtual display is very different than it is for a television or for a phone or any other kind of device, panel device out there. And so what does that look like? How do we have a common language? How do you have a common way to measure image quality so that when you develop products, it's repeatable and it's reproducible, and we can all have a common framework, as an example. Connectivity, super important. How do we drive connectivity? And in this case, specifically for what's a really tough category of product, like a smart glasses, so-called light AR. How do we create connectivity with the right latency and the power envelope and the overall payload envelope in order to be able to drive a very good experience? Super important. Safety. This is something that a lot of you probably don't know about, but the UL, Andreas Laboratory, is developing standards for product safety. How hot can it be? How bright can it be? You know, how heavy can it be? What are the various attributes? We want to make sure that the public who use the device can use it without injuring themselves. It's super important, and they already have that doing it today. And so we look at that, for example. And also, this whole area of accessibility of AR. And by accessibility, what we mean is that how do we enable a product that can service the largest number of people under the broadest range of environments? There's lots of considerations there, and it's not obvious. And again, we'll go a little bit more detail during the panel about what that means and how we do that. This is just a little snippet. And so we will have structures of more and more working groups that are developing standards. And with regards to standards, I want to also be very clear, we are not a standards body. We're not going to sit there and create standards. What we're going to do is to come together as an industry, define the key standards that are needed, the requirements that are needed, and then go to the various standards bodies that already exist today in order to codify the standards for augmented reality. So for example, if it's connectivity and Bluetooth, we go to the Bluetooth Alliance. If it's a Wi-Fi, we go to the Wi-Fi Alliance. If it's, there's ANSI, there's Visa, there's a whole range of existing bodies that actually do a good job of that. So our role is to say, hey, guys, for AR, for XR, we need these set of characteristics, attributes in the protocols, in the standards, and we'll drive it that way. That's the idea. So the idea is to have a multiplicity of activities that touch upon the key hardware enablers to really drive the industry forward, and through that have commonality, through that have repeatability, through that have reproducibility, and through that enable mass market adoption, because without that, it's very difficult, it's nearly impossible to have any kind of mass adoption of products without that. So this is what the Alliance looks like. We have founding and regular members, associate members. 2 days ago, Google just joined as well, so welcome, Google. We'll have another announcement of some of the large companies joining. I can't tell you who they are yet, but this is the structure. You can see who's involved from what part of industry and what segment. We have materials companies, we have device companies, we have companies have content, and so on and so forth. And the idea is to help come together in a unified way in order to, again, build this industry. So that's really what this is all about. And so, our tagline is, see the bottom, is building AR together, and that's what we mean. So we want to have a neutral body, a nonprofit organization with a very clear mission to articulate what it requires specifically in terms of platforms and designs and ecosystems, and then that translates into standards and protocols and approaches in order to be able to drive the market forward. So that's really what I want to share with you today. And in the panel discussion that follows, we'll go into a little bit more detail and have my colleagues on the Alliance talk about how they view it and how they want to drive it forward. So with that, I've got 5 minutes, and I'd love if you have any questions or comments or even complaints, I'm happy to take them from you. So let me pause there. Oscar, over to you.
Amazing, Bharath. Thank you so much for that very intense talk. And now we're from some Q&A. Whoever has any questions, we have a mic here in the middle line. So just get up and ask. Don't be shy.
These are super bright lights, by the way.
Huh?
It's a super bright lights.
Yes, they are super
Sorry,
bright lights.
I can't see anybody there at all. No questions, no comments, suggestions? Anybody? Anyone? Oh, somebody. Perfect.
So I like the idea of an alliance and everyone pulls together for a common product to move things along. how this almost feels like a competitor to Apple that has its own ecosystem that doesn't necessarily share. How are you going to deal with that?
You know, we play no favorites, right? You know, we are really, I can't comment on Apple. I mean, I just publicly speaking, Apple's an Apple, right? They have their own closed ecosystem, do a great job. And they're welcome to join the alliance, by the way. They're not exclude them at all. They're welcome to join the alliance because they share certain things. So we certainly welcome Apple. We're not trying to compete against Apple. What we're trying to say is that we need to have a common platform, a methodology, which could include them if they want to, again, if they want to join. So it's not anti-Apple thing by any means, but it's just recognizing the fact that there's a lot of us developing technologies and products that we need to come together, unify, who are not totally vertically integrated from soup to nuts, as they are, for example, to enable the market. And so I think they can both coexist.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, we still have some minutes.
Okay, you showed so many different parameters for the commercialization or realization for the mass market. In case of AR, what are the main bottlenecks for the commercialization or the consumer? Because every year we hear from the key players, okay, next year, next year, something like this. Is it due to the the technology side or the integration? Like technology side, it's a reflective waveguide or diffractive or holographic. What are the main bottlenecks?
That's a great question, man. We have I thought like a long time to answer all of it, but it's a really good question. And so my comment is twofold. First, I will say, as I said at the beginning, it's not a technology issue, right? It's a question of what are we trying to develop and really having some standards around that, some requirements around that, right? So for example, I'll just hypothetical. I want to develop a pair of glasses. It had a 30-degree field of view. It should be 50 grams. It should have this kind of power envelope, right? We don't do that. Everyone's doing their own thing now, right? They have this waveguide with this field of view, with this eye box size over here, with this kind of brightness, this kind of weight, some of that something else. And we're not unified, so we have to start to unify that. Number one, there's what do we want to achieve in that space? And then if we do that, then we can say, okay, here's what's required from a standards point of view to get there, right? And that's what's really missing, because everyone's doing their own thing, right? And they're trying their own approach. And it's great, but it's super costly. And how many companies, don't have that kind of bandwidth to do that? So really, in my view, anyway, I won't speak for all my colleagues, but in my own personal view, it's that lack of coherency, it's a lack of common requirements that's keeping us from starting to have a product. Because one of the problems that I see is that everybody wants, not everybody, but a lot of people want be-all, end-all device, right? And we have to start somewhere. And this is an industry that needs to grow. I was talking to somebody earlier, the first gen iPhone was not very good, right? Second gen was better, third gen was better, right? Or last year during dinner, I was talking to my colleagues, first gen flat panel TVs are terrible. They're expensive, they're terrible, look at them now. So same thing here as well, we have to start somewhere. We have to put a stake in the ground, start to ship products, has a certain attribute, and that's where we need to go, right? To get to the end goal of one little pair of glasses, totally immersive, that's far away. A lot of development happening there. So we got to really focus on what problem are we solving? Let's solve that problem and then go systematically. That's what we hope to achieve. That's where we're at. So I don't know if I answer your question. It's a lot of...
Yeah, your AR Alliance, are you trying to make a unified specification for this commercialization for
unified
consumer?
Standards, I will say, not spec.
Okay.
We're not going to say you must sell. We don't have standards, right, around these things, right? So how do you measure certain things? It's an important standard, right? Or if you have connectivity, what does my connectivity protocol look like, for example, right? Or if I have readability, what's that look like on a text to be a certain font, a certain brightness, and so on. So we want to have that level of specificity. We don't want to say you must sell a product that's blue and green, and we're not getting that far deep. But we want to have all sort of the critical parameters, the critical requirements at that level, so then people can design around that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you for the question. I appreciate it.